Training has not caught up with the requirements, and that it was assumed that the Maritime Labor Convention would be in effect before the Manila Amendments would take effect. When Secretary Metropolis first announced it, it was to harmonize things with the MLC, and now we were just discussing that there are some training model courses that have not yet been validated by the subcommittee. The subcommittee's not meeting till April or May.
First week in May, we still have to...
Is this a problem or...
Well, not really, because like with all the transitional periods, last time there were amendments, some of the transitional dates will have to be adjusted, and for things like security awareness training, the date's already been pushed back. I believe it's 1 January 2014 that requirement has to be met. So everyone is saying, the Manila amendments do go into effect 1 January 2012, but there are certain elements of the training that are covered by the Manila amendments that will have various transition dates. And from a flag state perspective, we've already trained our personnel was still able to certify under the old provisions, but only up until 1 January 2017. So people that were trained under the old ECDIS course, under the old security provisions of ISPS, that training is still acceptable.
All right, okay.
But now if they submit documentation for renewal come March, it will not be a 5-year renewal. It will only be valid up till 2017. So that's why I was curious when the Maritime Liberty here mentioned that all management level personnel would be trained by 1 January 2012. There's thousands of people with training courses that are not yet available. So that's got to be a transition period. It's going to be a slow period.
Good. Let's
changing subjects. Yeah, you mentioned that there was something I did mean to ask earlier on conditions for seafarers and the image of the industry. And it's always amazed me, and it came up, I think, at last year's conference. Everyone remembers the Chilean miners that were trapped.
Yeah, somebody mentioned the Chilean miners and how well it was managed, right?
Well, the thing is, the publicity that it got, CNN can put a helicopter there. They can put people on the ground, BBC is there with interviews of the family. The 270 plus seafarers, Filipino seafarers here that are being held offshore, nobody can interview. Nobody can get a microphone down there, and no one can take a picture of the ship. So it's out of sight, out of mind type of thing, unfortunately, and that's always been the way.
It's actually not like for like. I mean, you're talking about a disaster, say, on the level of somebody could have been in Japan and flown in and talked to people who guided their ships to safety in the tsunami. Which is a different kind of thing. That's more like the Chilean miners.
But it's a different perception. It deals with the perception of the industry. The people hear that there are hundreds of seafarers being held hostage on ships off the coast of Somalia, but they don't see it on TV. They don't see it on CNN. They don't relate to it.
And I think that part of that problem is one of the first things that we talked about this morning were the scores being published in the paper here in the Philippines and the support that the Philippine government gives the seafarers.
Yeah.
But they also have 200,000 seafarers that practically everybody here in the Philippines knows someone who's a seafarer.
Yes.
So there's a lot of knowledge that's been penetrated into the population. You take either the EU or any place in the EU or the United States.
And you're not likely to find that, particularly in the U.S.
In the United States, there are only 14,000 of those STCW qualified mariners, only 4,000 or 5,000 ship. Hardly any one of the 330 million people in the United States knows a mariner. So it's very difficult for people to become upset about something that they know almost nothing about.
But I understand that. I'm not sure if I accept it. I think any group in society that even if it was out of sight, so many people were suffering. So many people were victims of a crime, which is essentially what they're victims of. I think it would be up in arms. It's astounding to me that there's not.
Oh, it is. Well, I couldn't agree more.
But I have to say, though, the Save Our Seafarers program, and when they printed a full-page ad in the Wall Street Journal.
Yes.
How long do you think the information persisted in the population from that?
Very little. I mean, it is very difficult. I admit it, and it is because we're not in the fabric of society in the way
The mainstream media is what it is, and that's what we have to do a better job as an industry of getting the word out to mainstream media. The industry media, is sympathetic to the cause and the problem and knows the industry very well. If they see the real, shooting and horrors that are going on these ships, I mean, the way they can relate to it. That's the problem. It's out of sight, out of mind, unfortunately, in the
And in much of
Western
the
world.
Yes, when we had Alabama taken and the SEALs rescued the captain from that.
Well, that was very popular for about a week. You're right, exactly.
Yeah,
Because
mainstream
that's
media.
overcome by events. Other events took precedent, and there's almost no impetus from the population to get more information on things like that. So I think it's very difficult to penetrate that veil of basically indifference as far as I can see.
One question for each of you gentlemen. If there's one thing that needs to be done to attract the new generation of seafarers and to make sure that they're up to quality, from the American Maritime Office's point of view, from a flag state point of view, what needs to be done?
I think we have to give them a clear career path that is achievable. And that starts in the very beginning of showing them that there's actually going to be something there for them in the United States, which is almost each day. I'm in Washington, D.C., so our merchant marine is under constant attack. So American officers are always a little uncertain on what the future may hold for them. So they need a clear career path, is what I think is the first thing. And I think one of the questions that did not really get answered here, and it had to do with what do the ship owners want? Well, I'm not certain that there's a good connection there, because I certainly know that it was very difficult for me as a captain of a ship to convey to the ship owners what the shortcomings of the crew were. That's not something they want to listen to.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, you have a kind of experience I've never had.
Yeah, and the other point I would make is it was a very good question that Alistair asked. What would you do if you had one wish?
Yes.
And I told Bob right there, I said,
Same thing.
every ship gets cadets.
That's cadets.
And that's the answer. And the 800-pound gorilla in there is that no one put industry on the spot and said, well, how many ships do you manage and how many
cadets do you have? Yeah.
Because if you want quality, we know that provides a pretty good quality product. Why aren't we doing it?
I'm speaking to that subject tomorrow. The experience factor is certification does not necessarily meet qualification. One thing that no one says is meeting the STW requirements, but every page of STW says the minimum requirements for certification at this level, this level, this level. And education and experience continue, to go on. If you want to improve quality, you have to make sure the proper experience and assessment is there. That's the thing with the Manila Amendments, the proper assessment. And not just any officer is qualified to assess a junior officer or another junior. There has to be that leadership quality, the training to properly assess and not just say, oh, you look like a nice guy, okay, I'll sign your book. Can he actually do the job? It's not just, unfortunately in the past, too many owners just want the certification. Does he have the paper? Without being concerned, does he have the quality, training, education, experience? It all goes as a package. And that's really what the amendments are about, and it has to take the entire industry cooperation to see that the whole package is there. Unfortunately, the average age of seafarers has come down the last 2 decades. I mean, the old man used to be, 40s and 50s. Yeah. Now, a chief mate gets his master's license. By the time he's 30, he expects the job, whether he's really qualified or not. We're pushing people along too quickly without the proper assessment and experience.
Okay, very good. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Good
talking to you.
Cheers.